Good morning, y'all. It's been a while since I've made a video on here, and I was going fishing with some buddies this morning, and we started having this conversation around, how to show up as a father and as a present male in a family in today's age. And one of the pieces that came up in that conversation was showing up as the truth and really just not having any place for lies. And it started getting me thinking about truth. And, whenever I think of truth, I think of testimonies, because everybody has their testimony and their story. I was even listening to, some of you guys might know Theo Vaughn, who is a comedian. I was actually listening to his testimony the other day on how he became sober, right? Going through the AA program and his journey with that. And I was just listening to this 30-minute video, and I'm like, man, it's really cool to hear somebody's story, and hear somebody's heart on how they got to where they got to, right? And I know it's been always a good time when sharing my own testimony and story on social media of how I became a Christian, because this is really like the crux, or like the pivotal moment in my life when so many different things changed. And so I want to share that with you guys here today in this live video. It's going to be a little bit longer. I'm doing a Facebook live stream here for it, but I'll also be putting this on YouTube. So wherever you're at and you're watching this thing, just say hello down in the comments. I like to be able to see who's tuning into these things. Makes my day. And as we go through this, I'd love to hear your own thoughts and questions on this story that you're listening to that is my own down in the comments. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and have a conversation with you guys, tell a story of how I became a Christian. And this is a story that goes from DMT and psychedelic mushrooms to Jesus. So we're going to have a lot of fun here, guys. So for those of you guys who don't know who I am, my name is Patrick Bell. I'm the founder of a business called Kingdom Health, to where I work with individuals to walk through their health journey and really partner up with God throughout that process. And this looks like, online consulting for fitness and nutrition. This looks like in-person personal training down here in Dallas, Texas. Also looks like partnering up with entities to be able to help out with health coaching of, a team or staff. And this whole thing started because I got, radically saved and met a guy named Jesus about 4 years ago. I was a personal trainer at the time, and I had no intentions of becoming a Christian, but he just kind of met me at a really cool place and a really cool time. So I really got to start here, as a kid, and give you guys just a little bit of some background on me. So I never grew up in a really religious household. I was born in Grand Prairie, Texas, and raised just a little west of that in a city called Terrell, Texas. And I was baptized as a young boy and grew up in the Bible Belt, but I really don't have any memory of being at church as a kid. I left Texas when I was about 5 or 6 years old, and after that, the home that I lived in with my mom and her longtime boyfriend and fiance as well, there just really wasn't any talk about God in the house. There wasn't any going to church, no prayers, right? And so God was just really something that wasn't talked about, and I didn't get a lot of exposure to, at least in my memories, right? Growing up here, 3, 4, 5, I probably went to church a few times, but I never actually formed, in my opinion, a strong relationship with Jesus, a connection with him, or any sort of relationship to God besides just, knowing that he's there, but never really knowing who he was or having an intimate conversation with him beyond just asking him for, random stuff as a kid, like like most people as kids do. So growing up, this was, my childhood didn't really have that spiritual saturation that a lot of people who have been raised in the church have. So I wouldn't say this put me in a bad place by any means. I was raised in a great home, got good grades growing up, moved around a lot as a kid, moving from, Texas to California to Wyoming, back to California to Oregon. And it wasn't really until I was about 16, no, not even 16, probably like 18 or 19 that I really started to, just kind of say, hey, man, who is God and what's he doing in my life? Because some things are happening that I don't really understand. But it took a while until I was about 21 to really realize, who Jesus was and who the one true God is. And so in that journey, around high school time, my personal journey to Christ was really triggered through psychedelic drugs. So I started to partake in these, I believe it was the summer after I graduated high school. So going into my freshman year of college, I had just gotten arrested for underage drinking and throwing a party. I was voted the party animal in high school. For those of you guys, wanting a little bit more context there, I really didn't drink a lot. That was never my cup of tea. I just smoked a lot of weed back then, and at a high school dance, just got really high and started dancing like crazy. And in a small town, that gets you the tag of the party animal, I guess, in the yearbook. So, coming out of high school, definitely a popular guy and definitely one who wanted to always have a good time. What I found was, drugs like marijuana, for instance, brought me out of my, out of my shell. I'm a very extroverted person. For those of you guys who know me in real life, I love talking to people. I can get down on some conversations, especially if they have to do with fitness or Jesus. Those are my favorite things to talk about. But I didn't really embrace that growing up a lot. So these compounds like marijuana, for instance, brought that out of me. When I would smoke weed as a 17 or 18 year old, it made me friendships, right? It built the foundation for a lot of, lifetime friendships actually, in my hometown in Oregon, and, built up, kind of this ability to be able to go out there and just be me. I had this boldness that I didn't have sober. So that was really where I started out with like recreational drug use, was, being about 17, 18 years old as a high school, I want to say junior or senior. Yeah, junior year, started smoking weed. And so developed a lot of friendships from that, and, saw it as something that was helpful. I didn't drink any alcohol at this time in junior year. Wasn't until senior year that I started drinking alcohol. And then eventually my summer after high school, I decided to try out. I was with some friends hanging out. I was in a very depressed place at this point in time because I had just gotten arrested for this underage drinking, and I was really reevaluating my whole life because I was an A student, and then I started smoking a lot of weed. My grades went down. I'm going to a community college, which is not a bad thing by any means, but I didn't really picture my life going that way. I didn't really picture my life going any certain way because I didn't have a lot of vision at this point in time. But with that, I'm kind of questioning who I am and what's going on. And so I'm hanging out with a couple friends, and they say, hey, Patrick, do you want to try some acid? And being a young, adventurous, 18-year-old, I'm like, yeah, sure. I don't have anything to do right now. And I just remember that being the first place where I experienced psychedelic drugs. And it was, an insane experience for those of you guys who, and by the way, I'm not advocating any of the drug use that I am mentioning in my testimony here for those of you guys to use or follow a similar path as mine had been. I'm just sharing my own story here, so take it with a grain of salt, everything I say. But I took the acid and it absolutely blew my mind. Never experienced anything like that. My thoughts, especially now as a believer, is that psychedelic drugs definitely open up a portal to, the spiritual realm, right? And spirits come in with that. And I do believe one of the spirits who can come in from that is the Holy Spirit. But there's also other ones, right? So it's a very tricky battlefield to go into. And I didn't have a relationship with the Holy Spirit to recognize who he was or when he was talking to me, right? But it's such a fascinating thing how these compounds can open up that portal, right? And what might take 7 years of meditation for someone to be able to reach an enlightenment might happen like that. But a lot of times people aren't ready for it, right? So it's very fast. It's almost like steroids in a sense, and not to say steroids are good or bad, but with that, how they kind of expedite the results, but people might get hurt from it because they might get tendon injuries or injuries in their body because they see such fast results with the muscle building that they don't really know how to safely pace themselves with it. So it's kind of similar with these drugs and compounds. They just show you things that might take other people a long time to be able to reach, and not all of them are true. Not all the things you see are true, but not all the things you see are false as well. So that acid trip was crazy. The thing I probably remember about it the most was being in the back seat of a 2-door car with one of my friends, and sitting back there just laughing for like 20 minutes straight, but not saying a word out loud to each other. And the people who were up in the front 2 seats kind of looked at us at a certain point and be like, guys, what the hell is going on with you guys back there? You guys are just giggling for the past 20 minutes and haven't said a word to each other. And my buddy and I look at each other and verbally out loud, we say, we've been talking for the past 20 minutes. Like, we cracked a joke about football. I think it was Tom Brady or something we made a joke about. I'm like, dude, you heard that joke about Tom Brady, right? And my friend is like, yeah, of course, man. That's why I'm laughing. It was hilarious. And the 2 people up front are, they say, no, you guys haven't said a word besides laughing for the past like 20 minutes. And so really freaky things when you think about it, right? That's like some telekinesis stuff happening going on there. So little words of knowledge, right? For those who are prophetic. But this just kind of shows like the psychedelic drugs are just a crazy journey in the sense of super unexpected things can happen like that. And so my first experience with psychedelic drugs really was, in my opinion at that time, very cool. I was like, whoa, I'm reading minds and feeling things I've never felt and seeing colors I've never seen before. And so, as a young teen, recreationally used some of these psychedelic drugs going forward from that experience. Things like MDMA or ecstasy, other ones like mushrooms, psilocybin, which is being legalized in a few areas for recreational, they're not recreational, but I think medicinal use for therapy and things like that now. And DMT as well too, which is the strongest psychedelic drug that I did use and one that I believe was super instrumental in coming to Christ. That and the magic mushrooms were. So, I'm going on this journey as a late teenager, early 20s, 19, 20, 21, almost 22 is when I meet this guy named Jesus and decide to become his friend. But in that journey, I've become a personal trainer. So the one area of my life that I always knew I had purpose in, always knew I had vision in, always knew just this was the place where my heart was, to where I could help people and serve people, was through exercise and fitness. When I was 17, I made a pretty big fitness transformation. I gained about 50 pounds in 9 months, going from a string bean who never got any time on the field of football to, a team captain as an offensive and defensive lineman, starting both ways in a small town. So it's not like I was in a D1 athlete by any means, but I made my own transformation. And that really gave me a lot of confidence at that time to just show up, along with, smoking weed, and that kind of helped with gaining weight because the munchies. I put on this muscle and this size and, a little bit of fat as well too. But I saw this transformation that happened. Girls were talking to me. I was talking to girls, building friendships and just finding this therapy, right? I really do believe I discovered, the beginning of my relationship with God through movement. And that's something I continue today. Exercise is how I speak to God, and in a big way that God speaks to me. When I'm in the gym, whether I've got headphones in or not, or I'm talking with people, or I'm lifting weights, or I'm doing body weight exercises, or I'm stretching, or I'm doing cardio, that's the place when I'm the most open for conversations with the Lord. And, in those times when I was 16, 17, that's when really just started to hear this encouraging voice that I didn't know who it came from at that point in time, because God's voice often sounds like our own voice inside of us, right? And just saying, Patrick, you're made for such great things. Patrick, you help people out so well when you just guide them to the gym. Patrick, you've got such good purpose here in the gym, and I'm so proud of you for the transformation you made. And at this time, fitness was just, and still is, something I'm so stinking passionate about. And I always, knew that was going to be my career after making that transformation. And so going into senior year, I said I was going to be a personal trainer. I think I might have said I was going to be a physical therapist because that sounded better to the adults, but I didn't really care about therapy. I wanted to get people jacked, I wanted to get people strong. And so I became a personal trainer at the age of 19. And it was amazing. From my first introduction, I loved it. Just being able to get my hands on people and, give them confidence that they didn't have before, show them, aspects of themselves, attributes of strength and boldness and persistence and endurance that they didn't know that they had. And also just letting them in on a little bit of how I, discovered God through movement. And even at this time, not being a believer in Jesus yet, it was still, I was always imbuing this very spiritual nature in it because, as a personal trainer, you're people's therapist at the same time as being their personal trainer. So, just sharing philosophies and stuff like that, not yet knowing the word or anything like that. So, but it was just a part of who I was. And I have so much passion for fitness. And at this time, I could just see myself going in a great direction, right? Mentors were coming into my life to help me out in my fitness. I got a boss who showed me a lot of really good things in business. Had a life coach at this point in time, both of whom were believers in Jesus as our Lord and Savior. And, just a couple of really cool people, like 4 or 5 people who I just started noticing that they were Christians. And but they never really pushed Christianity on me, which I'm thankful for because it was my own decision. But as I'm starting to get surrounded by these people who love Jesus and they're pouring into my life more than anybody ever did, without being pressure-based, without it being like, hey, I'm pouring into you because I want you to become a Christian or a believer, they would just walk their walk and be them and make mistakes, but also, be bold and courageous and speak life into me in new ways. And at this point in time, I think was the first time I really started getting out, in nature, because I lived in Oregon at the time, and just talking to God, right? Just saying, hey, I want to acknowledge you're there, and I've realized you've got your hand on my back. Like you've been pushing me, or not even pushing me like aggressively, but just guiding me in a great direction. I'm in the career field that I love. I'm getting wiser, I'm getting smarter, I'm getting new opportunities to help out more people. And I just want to say hello and acknowledge that you're there and just say thank you, right? I remember going for, I just got a phone call there that I had to cancel. I would go for walks out in the middle of nowhere by lakes and mountains in Oregon, and usually I'd be smoking some weed at the same time. And, just say, man, God, I just appreciate you for who you are. But I never really had like a super deep relationship to the point to where like prayer was a daily thing. It was kind of like, man, got 2 hours, I might as well go hike. And during that hike, I'd kind of go just do a little, what I didn't know was prayer. I would just almost talk to myself, it felt like, right? And just at that time, I'm also, still partaking in some recreational psychedelic drugs and compounds and partying, drinking alcohol. By 21, I'd actually gotten arrested for the second time for underage drinking, and this time it took my license away. And again, I was never a big drinker, hear me out on that. I just had really bad luck with drinking. And so when I did drink as an underage kid, I would just get caught. But I wouldn't, I'd drink maybe once or twice a month. But those times would be the times that I got caught, right? And so obviously not all of them, because I got arrested twice. But with all of that being said, getting arrested for the second time really jacked with me, because I was 2 years into being a personal trainer. I had actually just started running my own business at this time too, I think I was 20 at this point in time. So I wasn't quite 21 actually when I got arrested for that. And at this point in time, I just started my own business that year as a personal trainer, left the company I was working for and became an independent contractor at another gym. I'm starting to take on a lot of more responsibilities, and I just look at what's happening. I'm like, this isn't right. Like the person that I am, and who I know I'm called to be shouldn't be making mistakes like this. And a lot of it was just the environment I was in. I was letting myself be around people who were partying and drinking all the time, and just kind of numbing myself with the relationships rather than pursuing really great ones. I would just go around comfortable ones. And again, I had a few key people who were great for me for my growth, but I would just keep getting myself in stupid situations. And so that's how I got arrested that second time. And after that, I was pretty depressed, very depressed actually. Because of the fact I lost my license, I had to ride the bus 20 minutes both ways to go train clients in another city. So I had to wake up earlier, had to get back home later, and had to work around a bus schedule. And I had to be helped by other people because I couldn't drive for 6 months at this point in time. You know, when you're on a bus, there's a lot of time for reflection because you're not actually driving or doing anything. So just kind of looking on my life and saying, man, I want something to change. And at this time as well too, this is where I start trying out like mushrooms. And what ended up happening with the mushrooms was something I hadn't experienced beforehand. And this is really where the journey to Jesus starts to accelerate a lot more. And what happened was, as I was doing these psychedelic drugs, specifically the mushrooms, what ended up coming up was some unresolved things that had happened in my childhood. And, you know, I would take the drug and I'd be out with friends partying, but then I'd just get this weird anxiety, like I couldn't be around people. And so I would have to go alone. And when I was alone, thoughts that I hadn't thought about since I was, 6 or 7 years old started to come up. And I didn't know how to handle these thoughts. What a big instrumental piece in this was actually the thoughts that came up were some experiences when I was little boy, that were, sexual in nature with another little boy, right? There was an older man or older child. And, there was these homosexual experiences that happened as a kid. And then, another situation happened in a similar light, a few years later when I was older with a younger boy. And I didn't know how to handle those or where to lodge those away in my brain. Because I'm in my opinion, a good looking man trying to get the ladies. But I've been single for 4 years, really kind of walking through my own journey of becoming a man, looking for a wife, and also at the same time trying to live up to the culture of, you just have sex with women and that's how you elevate your status as a man. But I'm just going through this journey and I'm like, man, these things are coming up, these thoughts that I never really dealt with are coming up, and I'm just going, what's happening, man? I was able to shove those thoughts down into like a cellar of my brain as a kid. I never really had to deal with them beforehand, but these psychedelic drugs, every time I was doing them, even though I loved the high and going higher, they'd always bring them up, and I didn't know how to handle those or deal with those or even just sit with them. So I kind of stuffed them away. But then when I got sober the next few days, like after I would do, the mushrooms or whatever it was for like 3 weeks afterwards, I would just be in a haze because I'm like, man, how do I handle this? Right? Does what happened to me as a young man make me gay today? It's kind of some questions going on, even though, no adult experiences like that ever popped up. But I was like, man, this is so crazy. I went like 12 years never even thinking about those thoughts because I was so good at just shoving them down. But now they're uncontrollably coming back up, and I don't know how to heal from that. I don't have anybody to talk to about this. But they're just sitting there causing this low to medium grade anxiety everywhere I go, and I know there's some people listening who can relate to that. You got some things that are unresolved in your mind or in your past that just cause this low to medium grade anxiety, in your life. Maybe panic attacks are coming up, social anxiety, whatever it might be. I dealt with that a lot. I would, be at these parties where, got invited by very attractive women to come hang out with them. And I'd go to these parties, and instead of spitting game, I would be, in the bathroom, sitting there for 40 minutes, not wanting to come out and just feeling so weird. Like, why can't I talk to people? Or I would go into, the back of the party where no one was, in a room where nobody was at, or outside in the back. And I would just sit there for like an hour. My friends would say, "Hey Patrick, where'd you go? We didn't know where you went." Or I would go out to my car, and it was like, I just felt like I was having panic attacks all the time. I was, and I was smoking a lot of weed at this time, and starting to drink a little bit more just to numb this stuff, because I wanted to feel something. And I remembered that weed, allowed me to feel stuff growing up as a teenager. But at this point in my life, that was just feeding the anxiety even more. So, I stopped smoking weed around other people. Specifically, I could only smoke weed around, by myself. And even then I didn't like doing it a lot. Went from smoking like every day to not really smoking at all, and maybe doing it like once a month or once every 2 months, or whenever. My friends thought I was getting a little weird because I couldn't, partake in our favorite recreational hobby anymore. But I had some good friends who didn't really care. It's like, Patrick, do you through this journey. But I was in a dark place. And so around this time, my family that was living with me in Oregon, or I was living with in Oregon, ends up actually moving back down to Texas to be closer to extended family. And I got the decision to either stay in Oregon and continue running my personal training business there, which I had built up and was feeling good about, or I could go to Texas and, be with my family and start a new life. And what I decided to do was actually to stay in Oregon. I didn't go to Texas at first, but I moved my family down, my mom, and helped move my sister as well. And I stay up in Oregon, actually. And at this time, that was 6 months before I just made the decision to actually go to Texas. Is January 2018 to about July 2018. I decided to stay in Oregon, and I didn't have any blood family there with me. And that was one of the loneliest seasons of my life. Around April time that year, I got my second knee surgery due to a genetic condition that doctors had diagnosed me with called osteochondritis dissecans. Fancy words for a lack of blood flow to the cartilage in my knees specifically, but it could occur in any joint. And because of that lack of blood flow, the cartilage would end up dying in the fringe areas, and those dead pieces would chip away from the main body of cartilage and kind of become like pieces of shrapnel inside of my joint capsule and the tissues and tendons around it. And so those little pieces would jingle their way into unfortunate spots, kind of like a rock getting stuck in a gear, and my leg would lock up and be in a lot of pain, because I just couldn't move my leg. And so as a personal trainer, this really sucked. There'd be like a week or two where I'd be feeling great, and then a week I'd be out completely and have to just sit down as I train my clients a lot, because an episode might come in the middle of a training session. Wasn't able to demo exercises the way I would like. And so when I was 19, I got my left knee worked on, and they removed that and fixed up a torn meniscus in there. And then when I was 21, at this time when my family had moved, and it was April 2018, 4 months into kind of being alone without family in Oregon, I had friends there, but no blood family. I had my second knee surgery. And for those of you guys who have had knee surgeries, it kind of puts you out for a while, right? Timothy, what's up, dude? Thanks for sharing, man. I appreciate that. Good to see you on here too, dude. After having my second knee surgery, I was just lonely, man. Taking painkillers, smoking weed to be able to decrease the pain. And at this point in time, and weed was legal in Oregon at this time, so I was using it to actually decrease the pain, which it did help out with a lot from the knee surgery, to where I didn't have to overuse any sort of painkillers, which was nice. And just super, super lonely at this point in time, and I didn't really know what to do. And I remember I was getting ready for a transition to move to Portland, a larger city, to kind of run 2 different gyms for the company I used to work with before I started my own business, and making like a huge shift, because I just knew something had to change. And, my body was broken. And for those of you guys who have had injuries, one of my favorite truths in that is, with every wound is a womb for new growth, right? So if you've gotten an injury, that's usually a time when you go through like a rebirth of sorts. Your mind has to transform to be able to combat this new change. And so I was ready for a lot of change. And so I was looking for a new place to be able to work, great opportunities, to be able to go out there to Portland and work. Hold on one second here. My computer turned off. Yeah, oh well. But with that opportunity to go out there and work, I had to leave behind my current clients and move cities. And so I told all my clients I was leaving. I was getting ready to go to Texas or not Texas, but to go to Portland for a bigger, better opportunity. And one night I go and decide, I just get a wild hair up my butt. I don't know, my life coach actually said, you should go check out these gyms before you commit to working at them. And I thought that's a great idea because I never looked at them. And I went to those gyms, and the second I got in there, I just felt like sadness. The second I entered the room, and I was like, man, this ain't for me. So I'd already told my clients that I was leaving Texas, or leaving my personal training job. I'm giving spoilers here for what's coming up. And I remember after checking out those two gyms, I think I called my mom the next day and I said, hey mom, I'm coming to Texas. I'm gonna move down. And it just made her so happy. But I made this decision to where I was gonna choose joy over sadness. I didn't care what money was involved. I'd already told my clients I was leaving, and I knew being close to the people that I loved would be the most important change for me. And so I decided to, leave my home, which is Oregon. Actually just got back from a 2-week road trip from there, which was amazing. And I decided to leave and go back to the homeland, Texas, which for those of you guys who've been sticking around and watching the whole thing, that's where I was born. So I decided to take my Isuzu Rodeo and cross-country road trip down to Terrell, Texas, or Mesquite, Texas, where my mom was living at that time. Terrell's where a lot of my family lived and where I moved later. But as I do that, I'm at a really low point in time, like even lower than after the knee surgery. So I'm recovering, still 2 months out from my knee surgery. So for those of you guys who've had a surgery, that still means I can't really do a lot physically like I used to, which from someone who discovered a lot of his identity through fitness, that was hard. Very hard. Athletes, I know you guys can relate. And so I get to Texas, and even, it's so funny, guys, I didn't even have the money for gas to get to Texas, but I think I had $200 to my name. Gas was like $3.50 a gallon or so probably at that time, maybe $4. And I didn't really do the math. I just left. And it wasn't until about halfway through, I'm getting real low on cash, and I'm like, wow. Might have to ask my parents for money, or panhandle. I don't know what I'm gonna do. My tax return comes in halfway through the trip and gives me some money to be able to make it home. So if that ain't God, divine timing, I don't know what is. So many cool things happened, around this time financially that just showed me the love of God. So that was one of them. I didn't get my butt stranded in the middle of the Midwest of the United States, and I made it down. Started living at my mom's house on the couch. Shortly after getting there, though, because I have no money to my name, I got about maybe $100, $200, actually, let me rephrase that. And I have no financial engine. At this point in time, I'm looking for a job as a personal trainer, but also at that time, I'm living on my mom's couch, but she's about to move, an hour east into the country where there's no personal training jobs. So I'm in transition from that and choose to move in with some relatives, my sister and her father, and my nieces in Terrell, which was about 20 minutes west of where I was living at in Mesquite. And, moving with them, but my car breaks down, my Isuzu Rodeo, so I got to sell it for, scrap metal basically for about $600, because I couldn't fix it, what the pieces that were broken down on it. And so I got to sell it. And, I'm really sad at this point, guys. This is, I remember talking with my mom and saying, man, just being in this house, I feel sad. Like, I would say that was probably one of the few times in my life, if only, where I was just kind of looking at life and saying, man, like if I did die, it wouldn't be the worst thing right now. Never really contemplating suicide or anything like that, but it was just like, man, there's a lot of pain going on in my heart right now. Like if I did just walk out in front of a car, maybe that could be easier. Never like saying, okay, yeah, that's something I should do, and like planning it or anything like that, but just these thoughts would come into my head. And, it was hard at that point in time. That was the hardest point of my life. When I moved down here, I didn't have any, weed to numb myself. I wasn't drinking alcohol or anything like that. And so I was very sober and in a lot of pain. And what I think I learned in that season, and it's a valuable lesson my wife, talks me through today, is that sometimes we're meant to feel that pain and just feel it and know it's there and not really have to change anything right away, but sometimes just sit with it. And so that was that season for me, and it was hard. And at this point in time, I ended up eventually getting a job as a trainer and assistant manager at a 24-hour fitness in Mesquite. So living with my relative in Terrell, Texas, which is a 20-minute drive, driving with my aunt to work each day. Shout out to Aunt Tracy, you were amazing. And within that journey, started just getting my own personal workouts at a local gym in town at Anytime Fitness, and I ended up meeting a pastor there. And at this point in time, I was just open to Jesus. I was kind of somebody who would go to church once a month, or I had that core 5 people. One of them was my godfather. I adopted him as my godfather because he's the first one to just start talking about God with me and inviting me to church. And he lived in Oregon. And so for those 6 months that I was alone, he was really a core piece of the family there, besides some friends I had from high school. And he would take me to church, just once a month or once every 2 weeks or so. And I didn't really feel a lot there. It wasn't my cup of tea, but I felt something there. It felt just felt something to the source of all creation there. And it just felt nice. So I'd go occasionally. I'd tell him no sometimes. I'd tell him yes sometimes. There's no rhyme or reason. But I was just starting to check out what does it look like to work on a relationship with God? Because I worked on my physical health, my financial health, running my own business. And both of those kind of felt like they were in the shithole because my knee was recovering from knee surgery and I had no money to my name. So might as well work on my spirituality. And so I meet a guy who's a pastor. His name was Mike Scan. Great guy, just an awesome guy. And I meet him at an Anytime Fitness, and he says, you should come down to church, and just check out my church. It's a good place. We've got, donuts and kolaches. And as someone new to Texas, I said, man, you got kolaches, I'm in. If you guys know, kolaches just taste amazing, especially when they're fresh. And so I'd go down there and just start kind of tapping in and just touching it once a month, once every 2 weeks. And just saying, yeah, this is good. But I wasn't saved. I wasn't a Christian at that time. And I remember going back to Oregon actually around this time for a trip to watch one of my clients and support him who's going to a powerlifting meet. So he was, I had been training him up for a powerlifting meet, and it was in August or so, and I left in June or July. So I flew back. He paid for my plane tickets because he had extra miles. And so it didn't cost me anything, so I was still very broke. But I went back to Oregon and visited him. And during that time, I ended up hanging out with a buddy of mine who's got some DMT. Because I go down there and I'm like, man, I've been sober for a month, hanging out in Texas. So I just want something. And so he's like, have you ever tried DMT? And for those of you guys who don't know, DMT is one of the most strongest hallucinogenic psychedelic compounds out there. And I said, no, I haven't. Let's do this thing. And so, with DMT, it's kind of a 15-minute high. And usually you do it multiple times when you do it. At least that's how he told me to do it. I don't really know. It's the only time I had done DMT. But at that time, I put on the Halo theme song. For those of you guys who know, the guitar riff from Halo 2 and Halo 3 and Halo Reach. I think I did DMT 3 times that night, and I put on a different Halo theme song each time I went into it. And through that night, man, I saw these visions of kind of just going through levels of life, right? And levels 1, 2, and 3. And these are just what I saw. I'm not saying they're right. I'm not saying this is scriptural or anything like that. I'm just saying what I saw in my experience. But I just started going through the levels of life, and I ended up landing where I was on level, I think 6 out of 13 or 6 out of 11. And at that time, what happened was I saw this like clay doll, almost like one of those Russian dolls where, you open one up and another one comes out, but it was like clay, and there's a chisel chiseling away at it. And as it was chiseling away at it and the cracks were being shown, this rainbow light was shining bright out of the doll. And at that moment in time, that didn't make me happy. I was like, shit, God, because I'm still dealing with, the traumas that I experienced growing up as a kid. I call them traumas. It wasn't like, there's people who've been molested, there's people who've been raped. It wasn't anything like that, but it was just confusing. And so it was traumatic for me as an adult looking back because I didn't know how to digest it. But I'm like, shit, God, you're telling me I'm gay, damn it. And I'm like, why the hell is this rainbow coming out of this clay doll? It's supposed to like represent me. I'm frying on drugs too. I'm like, this is fucking stupid. I don't even like guys. I'm angry. Sorry, I just cussed. But that's definitely was my language at the time. And, sometimes I'll cuss now too. I can't lie there. But I was just upset, man. Really upset. And so that put me in a funk for like a week or two. I ended up flying back to Texas, going to, back in my rhythm, training, going back to church, once a month or so. And there was one Sunday, man, just one Sunday. I'm there at church, and I don't even remember what Pastor Mike was talking about that day. I have no idea what he was talking about that day. But I heard the audible voice of God for the first time in my life, knowing it was God, right? And it was kind of in that ending worship time when altar call was getting ready, and I heard his voice just say, Patrick, are you ready to heal? Something along the lines of that, like, Patrick, I'm ready. I want to heal you. Are you ready? And literally the thought that comes to my mind is, hey, we're like 3 months post knee surgery. I'm good. I don't know what type of healing you're talking about, but the voice was, no, I want to heal you of the attachments and the beliefs you have around what happened to you as a child, with those homosexual experiences. And at that point in time, I'm like, that's a big ask, Jesus. And it's scary. It was really scary because it was the first time in my life I was actually promised peace from something that was still causing me so much anxiety and fear. Like, what if people found out that happened? And man, I just remember saying, okay, I'm ready to do this thing. And I go up to the altar. They're doing, typical prayer of like, is Jesus your Lord and Savior? And like, yeah, sure, let's go. This is where he told me to go, was up front. That's where I get the healing. And I just kept my eyes closed for a lot of time, and I was crying. I remember opening my eyes after everything was done. The lights are back on in the church. People are leaving, grabbing their coffee. There's a brand spanking new King James Bible in front of me, study edition. And people are slapping me on the back saying, congratulations, brother. You just made the best decision of your life. How does it feel? And I didn't have words, man. Like, people were asking me this stuff, and I'm literally shell-shocked. I try to stand up, and my legs physically do not work. They're jello. I'd never experienced anything like this in my life. It just felt like I was rocked, and like, it was nuts, man. I still don't have words for it. But what I did feel in that moment was freedom. Like, yes, probably freedom would be the word to describe it. Man, like, this weight on my shoulders of what are people going to think of me? What do these experiences as a kid mean? Like, my past, being arrested 2 different times. What am I going to do with my life? Those worries just disappeared all completely for the first time in my life without having to use any drugs. And I was like, okay, I'm a Christian now. Jesus just did something no drug was ever able to do, no person had ever been able to do, that I wasn't ever able to do on my own. And that was to feel peace and full peace. And that very day, I made two videos, because I've always been a guy to make videos and be on social media. And so I filmed two videos. It's funny because I'm bald at that point in time. And at that moment in time, the two titles were how I became a Christian. And so I put that video on YouTube and Facebook. And it's funny because I'm bald at that time because I just shaved my head because I had I had what I thought was ringworm. He's constantly showing up in my body and it was on my head. And so to put the medication on, I had to shave my head. So I'm bald at this time in the video. And I make this and say how I became a Christian. I just kind of share what happened on that day. And the second video I made was how I healed from child molestation. And now, one part of my story is I have to realize that I wasn't molested. That was a victim mentality that I felt like I had to use to be able to share my stories. I had to label it as like I was a victim in the situation. And now, as I've matured throughout that, I realized I was a participant in it. And the older boy probably had somebody do the same thing to him who it happened, with. And so I just have to, verbally say that right now. And, what's cool is like through this whole journey, I've actually gotten to talk to that guy and, forgive each of us for the things that happened. And, so I just clear that up now. I wasn't molested. It was just a sexual experience between two young boys, right, who were very confused. But I healed from it. I could talk about it now. I think I took that video down, or I changed the title or made it unlisted or something like that, because I don't like the title now on it, and I couldn't figure out how to change the title on there, but you might still be able to find it. And so I made those two videos and I put them public on that day. Put all my dirty laundry out there that I was so fearful of other people knowing on a public platform that everybody could see. Those two videos. And it was the most love I've ever received in my life. Man. Oh, dude, I'm getting like, that kind of Holy Spirit goosebumps down the body, right? People just said, man, I'm thankful for your testimony. I'm thankful for your story. Men would reach out to me about similar experiences happening to them. And just being able to talk through that, I was able to be a light for other men to access that same peace and know that they weren't alone in those situations. And so many people were like, man, I'm so glad you became a Christian. That's so awesome. Like, just so much love, right, from it. And you had a great church family at that time to be able to support me in that. I had an uncle at the time who got me into this program called Tres Dias, which is like a weekend retreat. So it's kind of like a crash course through traditional Christianity. That helped me out a ton at that moment in time. And so this was all new to me, guys. But at this point in time, I found a second passion that I still get jazzed up about, and that's Jesus, because he healed me. He healed me and gave me peace to where I could talk about stuff, and I no longer let anything that happened in my past control my future or control my present moment. And that's the gift that only he can provide. And shortly after this, guys, such cool things happened. For 16 years, I had a pornography addiction that stemmed from, those incidences as a kid. And, from that, man, as I was just learning to become a man of God, I realized, dude, my nieces, who I lived with at this point in time, were looking at me as an example of a man. And I wanted to set a good example for them. And I didn't think it was right to sneak off to the bathroom to go watch some porn and do the thing in there. And so, man, I was at a service one day and just reached out and asked for prayer. I said, hey, can you unite with me in prayer on, getting rid of this pornography addiction and just let it be gone. I don't want it anymore. And so got some prayer from an elder there at the church, and cold turkey, dude. Just the porn was gone. Haven't touched it. It's been 4 years. And it's been amazing. And I really think that was a big piece that prepared me for my wife, who I met just like 4 months after all this craziness happened. And so I experienced, being able to talk about these childhood traumatic incidences for me for the first time ever. Feel absolute freedom, man. Like I can be me. I was able to smile, the same smile you guys see now again, and just share that with people. I've had some dental work done since then because these two teeth are fake. So it's a little bit of a different smile because I had some small teeth. They were like gaps, big gaps in between them. But the same smile behind it. And I was just able to be me again to the fullest. It felt so good. Back in training and just feeling great, on a hot streak, getting new clients at 24 Hour Fitness. I also just, experienced a radical healing in my knees at this time after my knee surgery. A buddy that I met from, that Trace Diaz event, he just calls me one day. He's like, I heard you got some knee pain. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, let me pray over you. And it was like 45 minutes. He'd stop every 15 minutes and say, hey, your knees feeling better yet? I'm like, no, not really. I'm like, all right, we're going to keep praying. And by the end of it, guys, the chronic knee pain I'd experienced after my 2 knee surgeries was gone and stayed gone for a long, long time. And it was just such a great thing to be able to experience. It was just instantaneous, and it was so cool to be able to, just experience that healing and what that, is. Right now, I'm 3 years after that, started to experience some of the first flare-ups of my knee since then. But dude, 3 great years of just instantaneous healing. And even now I've got so much movement capabilities. I just got to work on a few things to help out with my knees. But just experience that radical healing. That was amazing. I never knew that was possible. Pornography addiction gone. Talking about my childhood traumas. Shortly after that, I meet my wife. I joined a program for my business that launches the online business that was the roots of Kingdom Health now today. I started getting so on fire for Jesus. I'm like, man, I should just coach Christians in their health so I can talk about Jesus and fitness all day. And so I made the business for myself because I'm so passionate about Jesus. I couldn't talk about him the way I wanted to at 24 Hour Fitness. So I left and started the roots of what Kingdom Health is today. Didn't become Kingdom Health in name until 2020. 2020 or 2019. Yeah, 2020, I think. But just such a great experience, guys. So my journey through Christianity was really, instigated by these psychedelic compounds. And going back to the DMT, probably 6 months after becoming a Christian, I'm going for a walk with this woman who would become my wife as I'm courting her. And I'm just sharing with her about my stories and what's happened to me. And I share with the DMT story, and I'm like, yeah, I just saw this rainbow coming out. And this was around the time I first started reading the Bible, guys. And one of the coolest things that happened was realizing that rainbow that was coming through, I was reading the story of Noah at that time. And for those of you guys who are Bible scholars, the rainbow is the sign of God's covenant and promise that he's always going to be with us. And so the Holy Spirit met me while I was on those hallucinogenic compounds and told me my next step, my next level in life was to come into relationship with him. Wow. And what the enemy meant for evil was to tell me a lie, right? And to just feed the traumas that I had experienced and the lies that I was currently, going through. God redeemed that. And it was really to show, man, your next level, your next step in life is to come into full relationship with me and my son and feel the power of the Holy Spirit inside of you, which is just such a cool thing, man. To be able to talk to God every day like I do now, I love it. I love it so much. And so my journey was really kicked off in a different way than most. And now, been married for 2 years. I don't touch the psychedelic compounds like I did back then. I tried a little bit of microdosing a year or two ago. Wasn't my cup of tea. And I've just found after all this time, what I looked for in weed or what I looked for in alcohol or what I looked for in mushrooms, I could find in Jesus. And while at times it might feel like it's slower than those drugs, the maturation process was so much more powerful and made me into a stronger man who could show up and be a patient king for others to walk through their health journey and walk through their life journey and walk through their family journey and just be there for others. And that's just been such a powerful tool for me in this time. And, there's been some supernatural acceleration that's happened as well too in the kingdom, that's happened as well too. That's, completely swamped any sort of drug experience I had. But man, it's been so good, getting to know Jesus. And really the best high of my life is when I spend time with him. I love it. Nothing else can beat that. And he gave me the woman that I love and who I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, the future mother of my children, with Sammy. My wife, as some of you guys know her, and the business I love. I'm surrounded by friends that I never would have met had it not been for this. And my family relationships just deepened. And I was really able to learn my identity and who I'm called to be, my purpose with my family, with my business, and with my community, my friendships. And that's something I can never trade. And a relationship with Jesus is what did that for me. And I'm thankful for the patient evangelists who never shoved their religion on me, but instead just did life with me. And so I just want to encourage you guys as you're listening to this, if you got somebody who you're trying to pray into Christianity or into a relationship with Jesus, don't. Just remember 1 John 4:17. As he, Christ Jesus, is on this earth, so am I. Just be Jesus for them. Because when people experience the man who is love and the man who is truth and the man who brings peace that nobody else can, the man who is the one true living God, through you, they're going to feel it. They might not be able to put a name to it, but over time, they're going to be able to make their own decision to follow Jesus in whatever way that looks like. I found them tripping out on mushrooms and DMT. They may find them in a different way, but every way is beautiful. And if you're listening to this and, Jesus is a name that kind of triggers you and makes you feel a little bit funky, I was that same person. But he loves you. And if you want to, experience the most peace you've ever experienced, just say hello to him and start talking to him. It's as simple as that. You don't have to pray a certain prayer. Just through conversation, relationship with Jesus, your whole life will change. You are his brother, his sister, right? You're co-heirs of the kingdom with Christ. He does not sit above you, but he wants to sit within you, in your heart. God is not an angry God who wants to be a master puppet of your life and make you do his bidding. He's a good father who wants to teach you and walk with you as you go through your true life that you were made to live. He wants to live with you each and every single day and talk with you and experience life with you. It's the best thing I've ever done. So just want to encourage you guys today to do the same, whether you're a believer or not. And would love to hear some of your guys' testimonies and stories, comments, feedback, or anything I mentioned down in the comments as well too. Appreciate you guys so much for tuning into this one. That's it. That's how I became a Christian, from DMT and psilocybin mushrooms to Jesus Christ. Come on. Take care, y'all.